Turns out he's a major cinephile.
They don't watch enough movies. It's a very simple formula.
And here we go. Well, we had so much extreme fun the first go around, so we're back for part 2 of our X-Men franchise deep dive. And we're going to go all the way from Days of Future Past right up until the very end with New Mutants. And do not worry, we'll be getting our list of definitive rankings in this part 2 early present episode. So get ready to gobble up all this goodness, and away we go. Also, 1 point, First Class and Dark Phoenix are both on HBO Max as of recording this episode, which, we're hearing some buzz that HBO Max will be on Roku very soon, potentially in the holiday window. So fingers crossed for this Roku user. So X-Men Days of Future Past. Before we get too much into really talking about the movie here, the cure for Last Stand. Clearly not permanent. Magneto has his powers here and the post-credit scenes in Wolverine. And Rogue, since we're obviously talking the Rogue cut, you know how we do. This is 20 minutes of new exciting content not seen in the theatrical cut. She also has her powers back. Just a little weird when I watched it, when I thought about it a little bit, when you watch them that close together. So this is one of the first instances behind Lord of the Rings extended cuts. It was a clear difference in the theatrical and the extended cut. And when this was announced, I went out of my way to find the first Target. It wasn't the closest. The first Target that had this available ASAP back when I lived in Ohio. So they do one thing here that I don't always love. The whole introduction of a ton of new characters that we've never met before. Iceman, Kitty, and Colossus are all back as the original actors. And we have a fair amount of new characters. Blink being the most notable with the coolest power, I'd say. Especially because Blink was in the X-Men Fox show, FX show, Gifted. So there might be why I'm thinking about it watching this way after that show came out. Eventually we do get Storm, Magneto, Wolverine, Professor X, the whole gang back together again. All the original versions. This movie ties both the old and new characters together and makes the most spectacular crossover film ever. And look, I love Avengers, Endgame, Infinity War, don't get me wrong. But this was so much harder and had to go through so much weird planning to get the same characters, different time zones, and figure out a way to tie it all together to make some sort of cohesive story. And I think they knocked out of the park. Home run, right? We see a ton of deaths the first time through, but they find a way to make them obsolete. No Rogue, but as she's a main part of this franchise, she exists here more than just a cameo at an end, just like Jean and Cyclops. And they did remain just cameos, but thankfully, Rogue gets her due as an important part of this franchise, especially the original films. There's a few versions of the bad guy in this, Trask, who's a doctor, who's the maker of the Sentinels, which if you're a fan of the X-Men comics or the old Sunday morning cartoons, you'll know all about them. But this guy was teased in the post-credit of Wolverine. He was played by Bill Duke very briefly. I mean, there were so many people thrown into Last Stand that he was just one of those many, many people who had a brief and you blink missed it cameo kind of thing. But this version, way stronger, way more developed, clear main villain. And he's played by Game of Thrones alum and star Peter Dinklage. And through this, they have a more grittier, scarier version of the Sentinels than, you and I remember from those Saturday morning cartoons. Do we love the Bobby and Kitty romance story? It's nice, sure. But we know it's anti-Bobby and Rogue. And look, that's who the originals were setting up. At the end of 3, still kind of thought they were together, so I don't know how I feel about that. It feels a little bit of a doozy that relationship must have kicked rocks off camera, apparently. It's really fun to get back to another cool time period when they do make that jump, focused in the 70s. And we get more Logan, as close to the best semi-focused on him storyline. But he gets to interact with all of the new fun cast in Fassbender, McAvoy, and of course Lawrence. One thing coming from more gory Wolverine and one more of those left and 2 Deadpool films, the Wolverine non-violent scenes here, with his powers and clawing and sticking his sharp knife things through people's body parts and things, it's always going to be a bit jarring not seeing what that would look like in real life. And I get it, family friendly, but that's always going to look a little bit strange. Beside the fun time period moments, like, there's some lava lamps and water beds, tying the failures of the Vietnam War and being unprepared to the potential mutant threat, which was different from First Class. It's still, once again, a really nice, nuanced version of all the stakes and the conflicts existing in history and relating to mutants and mutant rights. Also, we have another fine version, the third and final, as of right now, portrayal of Stryker, in this case played by Josh Hellman. The scene in Saigon is over super quickly, but even one scene, seeing them being used in action, the mutant characters in the Vietnam War, would have been super cool. I don't know what that would have taken budget-wise to recreate a whole older times war scene with all these mutant powers. And we do see a lot of these powers, but it's in like a confined tent. Just seeing them for what they were used for would have been cool. I mean, they did that in Watchmen. Obviously, this would have been more visually expensive, but I don't know. Would have been cool. The whole show don't tell rule, right? But we get new looking version of Toad, a brief cameo of Lucas Till as Havoc, one of the few characters not seen either killed off on or off camera from First Class. Even a brief look of him is nice and appreciated to make some of those other characters beside the main 3 feel a little more part of the world still. I mean, we know they whacked off a few of them, but at least some people are still alive and visually shown doing something. And we rarely got to see Beast and Wolverine act together, interacting in the original movies, and I guess Beast has a whole Hulk thing now where he can come and go as he pleases. It's controlled by medicine, but a little weird to see that he can just kind of jump back and forth between the two. We also have another version in cinema, a second version of Quicksilver, first played by Kick-Ass star Aaron Taylor Johnson. Too good, but quickly gone, mixed reviews. Now played by another Kick-Ass actor, and more importantly, an American Horror Story actor. You guys know, always bringing it back to the first episode, Evan Peters. Things get a bit tricky now with rumors of him being in some way the MCU Disney Plus show WandaVision, and his sister is never shown here. Obviously, the parentage in Magneto, in X-Men, and the MCU version has them being experiments. And he's apparently not playing Quicksilver in WandaVision. He may be Mephisto, Mistopheles. I know it's Mistopheles is the full version, so we're going to go that route. It's from the Ghost Rider Nick Cage movie, right? So we'll see. Maybe they'll find a way to do something with Quicksilver in MCU with him or Aaron Taylor Johnson, but I don't want to get my hopes up too much. But besides all that, Evan Peters as Quicksilver, amazing. Some of the best slow motion scenes to ever exist. This first one is easily the best of the 3 that we get in the next few movies. And to some amazing oldies music with Time in a Bottle. This movie, this is just another one of those amazing scenes. In the later movies, Apocalypse and especially Dark Phoenix, this is the best scene of those whole movies. Now look, Dark Phoenix, terrible movie. We'll get to it. Apocalypse, I have mixed feelings about, but the slow-mo scene in that movie, so good. I don't know if it's better than this one because it's on a grander scale, but honestly, very good. Easily one of the coolest parts of the new X-Men. It cannot be understated how amazing this scene and character is and are. Running around a kitchen, playing with the room to take down like 10 prisoner guards. He's moving the bullets, and the editing, special effects, and the music choice. This has to be one of the cooler things in cinema. Sadly, this is shorter and only one scene we get with him. But he becomes an actual part of the team soon enough. Sadly, in this movie, have his awesome moment, send him on his way. We have so much else going on in this movie. We don't even have time to get more into it, apparently. And more fun historical things. I love the illusion of first having JFK's assassin being Magneto because the bullet curved. Fun fact, the other bullet curve movie, where that's the whole point of the movie, Wanted, also has X-Men's James McAvoy in it. But later implying that Magneto is trying to save JFK because he was a mutant too. I like my historical fiction tied into these X-Men movies, and the third one does okay, but the first two really do a nice job of melding those two worlds together. I love how complex and broken both Eric and Charles feel on this. And the first movie developed them and had them in there, but it feels like you almost are a little more internally seeing these characters in this newer version of the movies. And just how messed up they are. Charles dealing with his demons and Eric dealing with more loss and grief. Like I said last episode, they put Magneto through so much in these movies, and it makes his character arc so good. Every fight scene we get with Mystique, so good in this movie. And even the diplomatic scene with so many 4:3 aspect ratio news cameras, Wolverine seeing a younger Stryker, and some super cool, now we get to really see how he did it, Magneto bullet curving stuff. He's fallen, and his magnet powers are still able to control the gun, and he sends the bullet with his Magneto magic powers. Both of them are closer to their darker selves, I think, here. And Magneto making the hard choice to try and kill her to save all of mutant kind. I mean, he does have that God complex a little bit, but it doesn't always feel super egotistical because we can always relate why he's doing it based on his past or why he thinks he should do it. The one thing that the Rogue Cut does better here is finding an actual way to tie in the present, future day characters. Otherwise, it feels like you really see this brief moment in the beginning. You're in the past for most of it, and you have two brief moments, another fight, and one brief moment in the middle. But here, Wolverine cuts Kitty and Iceman gives her an ice pack, and that's it, minus the final fight. That's what's in the original cut. Here, in the extended edition, we have way more backstory and a nice way to get Rogue, who should never have been killed off camera, as is such an important part of the first three films. They need Rogue to take Kitty's powers over for her. And they tie it in so nicely with the modern time, them walking to save Rogue, while his past self menacingly goes to do the thing that will condemn them. And it's such a nice intercutting of footage. And I know I don't always love jump in between our story narratives, but this movie does a very nice job, especially the extended cut, of blending everything together and making it feel nicely paced. One thing we don't like here is we see Bobby die twice, and the first death was way more violent with his severed frozen head being stomped on and crushed, but knowing the end, it makes it all better. I actually like this version more since we have a more specific reason why the Sentinels come after them in the final part. They don't just magically find them somehow. And of course, having Rogue, who had such ties to Logan in the beginning of all of the movies in 2000, being a part of him helping in the end is so important and a great way to end this final arc from the modern mutant group and handing it off to the next generation. I completely forgot some of the really cool scenes here too. Having Charles talk to Mystique through like 20, 30 different airport folks. They have some really cool ways of showing off mutant powers, and he's always going to be tough to visually show. There's Magneto's powers are always going to be visually exciting. Charles' mind control only works so well, but this is a really nice way of showing it without having a way to literally show like brain waves physically emitting from his head or something. This movie is so good, but the final third act really shines with the juxtaposition of the modern Sentinel fight and the past ones with their more cartoony, innocent look. And the final fight, like the beginning, both all of our favorites, too good. We do have to see the unceremonious death of Storm off way too quickly. And we do still have a really good use of Kitty, who, while Rogue's doing her previous job, her injured self is still able to pull Magneto in to the door at the end when he's kind of slowly dying, she's kind of slowly dying. It just works well, and it makes use of all their characters still. And some of those deaths, I mean, Colossus getting his arms ripped off and way more violent deaths. The darkness of it all, I mean, I'm all here for it, as you guys know. And to really change the perspective of the Mystique from the originals, who we really never got to know that well. We had a few interactions with Magneto that showed her a little bit. She was never really a fully developed why she was doing the way she was doing things for the most part. We're here, obviously Jennifer Lawrence is the main-ish character, we'd say, of the next generation. And having her be the one who eventually saves the president and Trask, I mean, she does eventually want to go the other way, but eventually it all works itself out. This leads to the future being saved. We really think it's going to be Wolverine who does this, but he gets yeeted into a post-credit scene that may be one of the most contentious moments of the film, in a post-credit scene that we will talk about in the end. But before we do the end of this movie, it's such an enjoyable and all-encompassing moment from the franchise. And I don't mean the past, I mean the new present end. All those people we thought were dead, Cyclops, Storm, Jean, Beast, Charles, Iceman, all alive and back hanging out in the mansion. And Iceman is with Rogue, the love that should always have been. And they don't necessarily put Kitty in a bad place. She's teaching a class with Colossus, but the love story from the 2000s should still be a thing now, and thankfully it is. That tease with Wolverine, though, being gotten by Stryker, we like this as is, but it being Mystique, a bit weird since we see him in the next film. She's saving people, but this doesn't seem to have an impact of where he ends up still captured by Stryker's people in Apocalypse. So, a little confusing. We always like the Mystique ITs at the end because they've done it in many movies, but based on where he ends up and based on what happens, it's a little weird. So the important redemption, the redemption story, the reunion tour of Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool overall. Yes, the real Deadpool here, not that no mouth, lines and circles drawn on him, blades coming out of his arms, popping all over the place. He got his little sword arms, laser vision, whatever. Absolute garbage, as we've said before. The music they use here, perfect blend of oldies joy with Angel of the Morning and the amazing slow motion tour around the carnage for the opening credits. While the words and credits are less funny jokes after watching it a few times, this whole thing does kind of set the tone early for weird and violent, which I do like. And boy, were we thrown into the fray almost immediately. We don't get a ton of explanation, but the jokes, the action, the gore of a true R-rated movie, it's everything we want. And fourth wall breaking fun is something you get used to and enjoy immediately. You can tell Reynolds has fun in this role and is happy to just be able to do justice to this character that he got just a taste and a tease for in 2009. The jokes fly a million a minute, and you may miss something along the way, but they mostly land here. The jokes are good, but the dark humor moments for me are the best of the bunch, easily. Tied with the gore and decapitation and the cinematic moments like shooting 3 guys in one line with 1 bullet. Masterful, beautiful moments. They do get some X-Men teases and the mansion's there. The joke is always how no one is ever there and will never see any of the main characters. And we all want that crossover to happen. Not sure if we'll get it, but next MCU and his character, something will happen. And when that comes, it will be magical. Magic. When we do get context and origin stuff, we have some amazing fun with Wade. Just his words, a bad guy who fucks up worse guys. And his chemistry with TJ Miller is unparalleled. I think his jokes are arguably funnier than any other character's delivery of the jokes. Also the same with his love interest, played by Morena Black Karen from Gotham and Firefly. There are a couple scenes of them doing their lovemaking through the holidays. Truly amazing. And this movie is just so different in all the different unique tones that it takes and has. The movie does jump around a bit from past to present, and it is a bit jarring at times. I know we just came from one of the seemingly most jarring movies, but for some reason this one it's a little more strange because it happens in also recent time, and it jumps around a lot. but the story is pretty well told overall, obviously. While the slow parts are more dirty humor and jokes, which is okay, the things with him cutting his own arm off to escape after breaking like every bone in his ligaments, that's my kind of humor. The him becoming one mutant torture scene is good enough. Sometimes it's just a bit whatever. I always feel like I lose interest a little bit in the movie at this point. But I do love me some Mr. Sandman for some Halloween vibes, as y'all know, the unofficial theme of Halloween. One of the best scenes is him starting out as Deadpool, his like origin song. And it is a song. There's a whole rap original Deadpool song. Him picking out the red suit so the blood doesn't become an issue. We see why it was an issue. That's a great montage. Up on par easily with the X-Men Origins first class things of finding everyone and training. But it's a little darker and a little better for that reason alone. And of course, the amazing part of him killing a guy with a Zamboni, since I personally know a former Zambonier, practically an expert on this subject matter. Looks about right to me. Checks off the box there. So one thing not great about this movie, the villain. I may not have noticed it initially, because Deadpool Ryan Reynolds is so great, but comparing this to the franchise, Magneto, Stryker, all better, more developed fun. Both are fine for the movie here, but the same issue with other Marvel movies. The villains are just generic. But the hero is amazing and makes up for it with the charisma and fun. I feel a bit weird watching this movie. It should really not be compared to the rest of the movies in this category. That's why I feel weird watching it as an X-Men movie and not as its own separate thing. It's so different. By itself, these two movies, super fun. This is a good movie. I would never rate this poorly on Letterboxd. But I don't know how you could ever stack this up compared to Logan or Days of Future Past. It's just different. Like the end with a DMX soundtrack. So much superhero fighting, but a bit more violence, obviously. Like actually seeing the body parts fly off. Something not seen in this genre. And man, do I love it here. I have to say, probably should have mentioned earlier, the animations they did to make his mask have expressions, really nice job at making it convey feelings and emotions and actions that you may not feel when you look at a Darth Vader or a Kylo Ren or a Boba Fett on a masked character. That it adds something to have those things felt there. One of my favorite parts of the whole movie has to be his like dream love vision with the animations of like little unicorns and things when he has a knife in his head, and the music. This movie and this scene in general, unparalleled except for like the Spider-Verse movie soundtrack, because that soundtrack is flawless. The end of this movie, while it only sometimes mocks the genre, the best part is when after an amazing superhero speech about being a hero and making the tough choices, he shoots his enemy right in the head. That's it. That's the end. And we'll go on to the next movie. That's the end of us talking about Deadpool for now. So after Days of Future Past, hopes were high. With Apocalypse, which is a big storyline for X-Men fans. I don't really know it all that well, but I know it's a big thing. Oscar Isaac, great actor. We love Oscar Isaac, right? One of the best parts of the new Star Wars movies. I do like this notion of the Egyptian gods of the time not really being gods, but just being mutants and taking on that persona. There's something really cool about that. And while we have been getting not too far into the past, it has some cool vibes of Wolverine through time in that credit scene. It's a bit weird not starting with any of our known characters, but mythology isn't always bad. And the powers of the ancient mutants, whatever they're displaying and throwing out, super cool stuff. And they go under the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse guys, which once again, very cool. Honestly, I like the beginning a lot. It's dark, it's historical, fiction, but historical-ish, and visually exciting. Those are all cool things. There's something kind of fun about this previous movie, whatever we've seen in the past, being taught in a history class. Once again, we tie our world in together by making things relate to other things in the sequence. And we do get some justice for Cyclops being portrayed at least a little better and not thrown into the garbage immediately. We get a new Nightcrawler, still good, but the first one was good too. Sadly, wasn't in Last Stand because they didn't know what they were going to do with him, and the makeup was super time intensive. Stinks. But we have another one, and we can always appreciate what he did with X2. And we get some more looks at Jennifer Lawrence, which is always good, especially seeing what she's doing with her new, let's call it, purpose in life. What I really like is Happy Magneto. He's a family, you got a mutant kids who can talk to the animals. She's befriending deer and birds, and that's a pretty cool superpower. I don't know what I would want. Maybe like, I don't know, the fast one would be great because you could just kind of run and stay in shape or whatever. Flying would be cool, but I'd be nervous because I don't want to flap your arms to do wings. So I don't know, but getting our head of ourselves. It'd be great to see Michael Fassbender play a dad in like a drama where the stakes are really low, nothing bad really happens, and things happen, and everyone lives happily ever after. Not the case here, as the series goes again to torture and hurt Magneto. This time it's seen at least, unlike in the very good days of Future Past, but already said the few differences I would want there. But having him save someone and show his power only for his family to be killed, and he resorts back to his violent self. So heartbreaking, but also so amazing. And it's like that "come a little bit closer" scene from Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but without the fun music, no Bradley Cooper, no Michael Rooker, and instead it's just mad depressing. But visually, very cool and very similar. And we actually have a few instances with both the Summers brothers, Lucas Till being back once again as one of the few still alive and moderately present characters in them all. Not for long, though. And speaking of people who are back, Rose Byrne is back from the first one as Moira McTaggart. Doesn't really do as much in this movie, but she's there. I actually like New Jean as well, played by Game of Thrones alum Sophia Turner. They're really throwing GOT people into this franchise a little bit here. So in general, this movie is darker and less fun, but all of the Oscar Isaac powers look great. But the actual look of him, not so great. The guy under all that makeup could be anyone. Big upgrade from 3. They actually use Psylocke and Olivia Munn playing her with her real powers, and they look visually awesome. Angel was never really used. No real surprise that he's barely used here either. He's in 3. He's here. He's a little cooler here, but, they just don't know what to do with that character. And honestly, that doesn't really bug me that much, apparently. The tough part of this movie is there's some really good Magneto and Quicksilver parts, and they find some nice moments for the main cast and a few nice ads, but there's some really whatever parts with our main villain. He should be good, but something is just missing, not unlike Thor Dark World with Malekith or Ronan the Accursor in Guardians of the Galaxy and briefly in Captain Marvel. Somehow they make Thanos really good, and really he was only prominently featured in 2 movies. But this was not amazing. There may be an issue with Darkseid in the Justice League Snyder Cut. I hope not. CG characters feel like they so rarely hit. But I'm hopeful. I'm ecstatic that 2021 brings this amazing Justice League Snyder Cut. 4 hours plus, all its glory. I can't wait to watch on HBO Max. Please, hopefully, turn out good. You know what is amazing in this movie? Another amazing Quicksilver scene with "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This." It's the classic oldies song. "Sweet dreams are made of this, and who am I to disagree?" Yeah, that one. You know what does suck? The deleted mall scene that was teased in the trailers. It's part of the plot somehow, but it's never seen. What is the rule? The literary rule. I know I've said it already. I'll say it time and time again. Show, don't tell. And give Jubilee some love on camera, please. She's been featured in so many movies, but she never actually does anything, and it's always brief, but she's always there. Gosh, that's so annoying. But this will always be the best speedster in film, I think, ever portrayed. I don't know how Ezra Miller's Flash compares. I mean, we've seen him and he's okay, but this Evan Peters Quicksilver, the best. Nothing's going to ever take him down. He's the best around. That's just facts. But back to Jubilee for a hot second. No one ever knows what her powers is if you're watching the movies. But in the quick mall scene. They would have had Jean, Scott, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee hang out at a mall, do some fun things. She'd use her powers to turn the arcade machine on. And then we see the car driving back right before the Quicksilver scene, but we don't know why. They just left and came back. It would have been a couple minutes, max. And it's a couple minutes that would have been so great for the not just making logic jumps of, oh, they're gone, oh, they're back, and we never see where they went. Come on. And it's fun. Fun scene. Why not have a fun scene in here to really get that time period a little more presence, which this movie doesn't feature it as much. There's some Indiana Jones vibes. Love that. But I'd also like those same oldies vibes that were so present in the other two movies. But even with all this, we off-camera pretty much lose another of the first-class kids. We see how it happens, but we don't really see it happen. But I guess they were kind of saying, okay, let's get rid of Havoc and let's put Cyclops as the main brother. We don't really want to use them together for some reason, but fine, whatever. The one thing about all this, Stryker in this movie feels a bit random. He's getting to his post in X2, but even in that scene, there is an assume and not seeing things. The more of that, the better. The reason Dawn of Justice worked when they added things is because they added the context, so the logic jumps for order events did not have to be guessed or assumed. I'll always remember the scene where Lois is going down the escalator, she sees the guy in one moment, and the next moment she's in a helicopter. And you can assume what happened, but it almost looks like she decided to go, where in the extended cut, you can see she's taken and in the helicopter because they put her there, which makes way more sense. And it's like a few seconds more to add that context, and that's just not here. The Wolverine tease, though, it's an amazing, fun cameo. The gore is not there, obviously, but just having him slicing and dicing, even for a bit in action, and we do see some blood splatter exist. It's artfully done, so it's like on the wall, but not how it happened. But you assume and imply how it got there. It's still good, especially with the code name they gave him, Weapon X. I wish he was in the final battle, but this is better than nothing. And who knows, if you're playing that game of where this all belongs logistically, you know, I don't know how to make this all tie in with the previous original films and his origin stories. I'll try to connect those dots eventually at the end here if possible, but it brings some questions of, is that where it's not where X2 starts, it's not where X1 start, is that somewhere tied in with Wolverine Origins? Your guess is as good as mine, folks. I have to remember how amazing Quicksilver is here, since he is grossly underused in the following film. You know why the baddie is so disappointing here? Unlike Magneto, who has a similar plan, Apocalypse is more selfish and has no likable characteristics arc. His evil plan is a bit too generic. That's the big issue here. If you want to hint at what to look for, anytime you see a generic world falling apart scene and there's shots from different things around the globe, the generic disaster film is on display, and that's never good. And look, the latest Fantastic Four, I love Michael B. Jordan, but that movie, not great. And you know how you know that? If you go to the end of the movie, you'll see a bunch of just generic shots of the world being taken apart in some master evil plan, but nothing matters. I feel like this was meant to be the final third of a trilogy where Dark Phoenix has lost all the charm and fun of the rest of the trilogy. For a while, I forgot why Storm turned against Apocalypse, and because of the early tie of her admiration of Mystique, who a lot of those younger mutants see as a hero, that's why she turns against Apocalypse, because she knows what the good person is doing, and when he tells, like, Dead Angel to kick rocks, like, she doesn't want to be in that part as well and joins the team. There is one super cheesy part here, is when it thinks all hope is lost, and Magneto makes a metal X with, like, girders to stop Apocalypse to signal the X-Men logo. That's bad, bro. That's clown stuff. In Apocalypse, from Magneto, no less, who is a character that I really like. So at the end, the clear Dark Phoenix arc is teased next. Not sure what I like better. Storm is good. Psylocke leaves, never to be seen again. I don't know which Dark Phoenix reveal is better. I like how the blocks were broken by her almost death last time, where here she just turns it on, and she can do with it whenever she wanted to be more powerful. We have come to the crown jewel, and at least that's how I remember it in the X-Men verse. It's Logan, R-rated Wolverine, with a really good story, and Patrick Stewart. What's not to like? Immediately, we see claws going through body parts and heads. We see a super down as like Wolverine. Even in the Wolverine, he did not seem so tormented by just existing and age and weariness and emotional trauma. And obviously, he had a lot of emotional trauma in the Wolverine, but it just feels like that was such a one-off, where here it feels like everything is pain and hurts, and he's real down on his luck. I was a bit nervous with our villain here in Pierce, being a bit generic and not unlike Ajax, who was the villain in Deadpool. I didn't even say his name when I talked about it. But he's a bit more charismatic here. Maybe it's because the whole story is broken up a bit more, or it's less personal. It's all a bit more small scale. Just a few people trying to survive in this world where mutants are barely a thing in the not too distant future. He's just another player in the world. He's not this big take over the world, end everything baddie. Well, I guess even Deadpool's not really that way. Maybe he's just more likable. Chalk it up to that. And seeing these two tortured souls who we've grown with and seen so many times before in these roles, it's a little somber and kind of beautiful. It really grounds this stuff in this world and these characters more than ever before. Once we get to see Laura in action, she handles the mature and complex role very well. Actor Daphne Keane is great here and is in His Dark Materials, which season 2 is airing right now, so definitely check that out on HBO Max. Even though she barely has a talking role in this movie, seeing their relationship unfold and grow as a surrogate father-daughter. It's like having the Telltale Walking Dead video game with Leah and Clementine, but you don't have to make the choices about why everyone dies in the end. Spoiler alert. Also having Laura and Wolverine fight together, and her powers having the toe spike as well, kind of like Kingsman, a little gotcha. The action is not always here, and it is a bit more of a slow burn at times, but when the action and fighting does happen, super cool. You know what would have made this whole movie cooler, though? And I said it before, they tried getting Liev Schreiber in this movie. And he would have been apparently in one of the scenes together to help the group of 3 out of the casino. But even a small feature in Wolverine in here for sure. Imagine them fighting till the end together and dying together. So many cool things could have been done here. Sadly, not to be. But the movie does not suffer for it. It would have been really cool and really full circle, but it's still fine as is. Don't get me wrong. More than fine. Would have been perfect with that final family X-Men tie. It is why this is better than the Wolverine, I think. Having Charles, super important to the plot as a moral compass. And a send-off for Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, both huge staples of this franchise. They would never have found a way to throw Magneto in here too, but giving some of the OG cast one last hurrah, especially having those two have such a close relationship, it lets it be unapologetically real and hardcore and so human of a story. I mean, gosh, it's so good. Some of the bonding moments between Charles and Laura are some of the best. He is the kind old man that is immediately a father to Laura when Wolverine tries to grip with the responsibility and even emotional availability to let anyone in again. He just wants to be there for Charles, and once Charles is dead, he's gonna die. That's the plan. He has the adamantium bullet around to end things for himself. He's not gonna care for anyone else. Being able to care for Laura is probably the hardest thing for him, more so than any villain in the movie, which explains why our eventual physical main baddie is who he is. And no, I'm not talking about the scientist guy. I'm talking about evil clone Wolverine, who does look a little bit like Wolverine plus Liev Schreiber. And his intro is so strong. Yes, they take a nice pause to see what family life could be and is really like. They give such a strong, special moment with Laura to recognize what having these loving relationships are and could be. Sadly, she quickly loses Charles, and more importantly, Logan loses him too. And through this time, we see Laura grow and have to take on that caregiver role to an aging, dying Logan. And as much as he does not want to care and want to give up, he can't. And when those final moments come, he not only saves her, but the other mutant kids as well. And here's where things get really good. The kid mutant powers, Wolverine taking some drugs to get his old badass super self back. I mean, the kids are exploding people. The girl freezes a guy's arm and breaks it off. The superhero powers are blended with more realistic gore than ever seen before. And when we finally get one more great taste of Wolverine in his heyday, think like that last spoonful of ice cream in the bottom of the container. Think the last non-dairy avocado-based frozen dairy treat. The last scoop of that. I mean, that's what I eat. And it's so good. That's my attempt at a sponsor read if someone ever wants to sponsor me. But gosh, getting back to the episode here, folks. Like his animalistic apocalypse version, but with all the gore that you would expect from impaling and slicing up someone. And those moments when he sees them fighting together, side by side, father and daughter. So many good things here. We have a fun Children of the Corn moment from our kids using all their mutant powers to take out the one main bad guy, naturing him into the ground with freeze powers and electric. It's so good. I will probably never watch Children of the Corn because the kid being killers thing, I don't like that. It's scary to me. It's not Spider's biggest house scary, but creepy kids are always going to be a weird, scary thing. Not normally about that. But it's good here. But the big fight, of course, is one final battle with Logan and clone bigger Logan, leaving him impaled on a tree, with Laura using his adamantium bullet to kill the clone. But alas, Logan clearly not going to make it. And like the prediction from the Wolverine movie, he dies with his heart in his hand. Aw, how about that? Laura in his hand, holding his hand. His not literal heart, it's metaphorical heart. I mean, oh, the emotions, the feels. I mean, shed a tear for the homies, am I right? Leaving the future to her. And just like the end of the first season of Walking Dead, her father figure dies. She is off in this scary new world in this responsible position. Gosh, I love those games. I can't wait to play the third and fourth when I get something better than a PS3. But now she has to guide this younger group of mutants. It remains to be seen if they'll be included in anything after with the MCU merge. They're not really featured in New Mutants in a very brief, weird flashback scene that messes up the timeline a little more. But don't worry, mentioning the mutants, we will get there. I swear. Same thing with Deadpool 2. I actually forgot this was an extended cut, but it is another one. Only an extra 14 minutes, but more action, more dark humor. Always important and appreciated. That's the kind of stuff I crave. Those extra things. It's not the extra 40 plus minutes of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It's not Justice League 4-hour TV version. But it's something. And once again, they have some fun music. Some fun times with music and how they put it in the movie. First, DMX from the first movie transitions to the Queen herself, Dolly Parton. Yeah, you thought I was going to say Beyonce? She's quite good too. But I'm talking Dolly Parton. She has and sponsors the song I wake up to every day. It's my phone alarm song 9 to 5, which if you're a working person, that song is the best. It's semi-accurate, it's a little ironic, and it's a great song. So all about it. It's an amazing song. Everyone should use this as their alarm song. The kills and gore, all amazing here. And coming off Logan, more violent X-Men movies is the way to be and the way of the future. Limb dismemberment, head cutting off, my kind of superhero movie here. I gotta say, never expected them to kill a love interest off so early. Like wildly early. Like Christian Slater in that one movie about all the FBI people on the one island early. It really was going to let you know this movie was going to be very different very quickly. Totally maybe not, but just plot-wise. We did know there were going to be some similar moments to Logan. He made the joke in the beginning of the movie. But there's going to be some emotional stakes here. And this intro, something to behold. I love my James Bond movies. I have the whole big ol' 50-year, like, oblong rectangle case artwork book version. I love those James Bond movies and those stylistic intros with those beautiful songs. This is no exception. I stopped laughing at the word jokes from the first one, but visually and musically, perfection. And we get a great Happy Death Day like montage in the beginning of him coping and coming to terms with the emotional trauma and trying to kill an unkillable person. Having Wade chilling in the X Mansion once that's all done. And I know we talked about it, that crossover we all wanted. There's a super brief cameo of all the X-Men of the past, so the prequel version's X-Men. They're all in one room together and they close the door. Beautiful to even briefly connect them all. And that's all we're going to get, sadly, but something better than nothing. But more important than anything, who the villain in the main movie actually is, mad confusing. Nothing clear-cut like the previous films. It could be Josh Brolin's Cable, or the kid with anger issues and fire powers. But instead of that, let's focus on how amazing Cable is. He looks great, super badass, and his Terminator-like intro features Matt Damon and Alan Tudyk. The cameos are on point in this movie. Shoot, Brad Pitt has the briefest blink and you miss it X-Force cameo that no one would have known watching it in theaters unless they knew ahead of time that that was a thing. And they do some fun with the X-Force and the joke of even playing with team-ups. He makes his own team with his X-Men days, don't really work out early, and we have some known actors, mostly I'd say Terry Crews. But the fact that they kill them all off quickly, like, this is a parody, right? I get the idea of him having to love again, the exact same thing from Logan, but I just don't care nearly enough about it here for some reason. Maybe because we know it's all a joke. Maybe the stakes are a little less because of it. Some parts feel a bit similar to the first movie. The mutant jail is different, but thematically and tonally it feels super similar to the first movie with the torture superpower clinic. I guess my issue, I'm discovering with these is I like my humor dark and depressing way more than like gross humor. That's my South Park issue. Oh, I know, roast me. I don't love South Park as much as everyone. Maybe I just only like scenes where Deadpool's in costume, kicking names and taking ass. And that scene where they all die trying to get on the armored prison truck, and the one who lives Domino, played by Zazie Beetz, who is also great in Joker, is actually a great add to the growing Deadpool verse. By the end of it, you have like 8 or 9 recurring characters that may be back in the sequel that Marvel makes up in the MCU. If there's any way for both Josh Brolin, his Thanos, and Cable to meet up, would be neat. No way it's ever going to happen, but it would be cool. And if we're playing with multiverses, anything's possible apparently. But only Deadpool would take a pre-existing comic book team, introduce them only to be killed off immediately and in fairly gruesome ways. Death by helicopter blade, your own Venom spit powers, wood chippers. The second time for an X-Men movie to feature death by wood chipper. Looking at you, Wolverine extended cut. One of the best adds to that movie. Speaking of nods to other films, they actually have a joke but cool reference from Wolverine Origins. And boy, is it good. He cuts one bullet in half, like Origins Wolverine movie where Deadpool does that, and then tries to do the same by spinning his swords around with the rest of the bullets, but they're so fast that he gets hit by a ton of them. What a moment to tie a movie that is probably critically panned and not appreciated by the fair amount of people who have seen it. Juggernaut is probably closer to Hulk, or what we'd expect compared to the Vinnie Jones Last Stand. And remember, I love my gritty British crime movies. I love Vinnie Jones. But that was a worse version by far. But better version of Deadpool losing a hand from the first one is now ripping his whole body in half. And we have to appreciate how great T.J. Miller and his humor is in this. They do way less with Dopinder than the first one, but he gets some moments to shine. I am so happy they got the whole group together in the end, though. And the fact that the joke of him being stabbed and having some romance song playing in the background, still the best part of the first one. I don't know if it's the best part of the second one, but having it exist at all, very strong, very important. if we're talking continuity things in the whole X-Men verse, having two Yukios who are different is a bit weird. One from Wolverine, who is clearly not the one who is here. The one here has powers, and they're very cool, electric-y, plasma-y, chain-ish power things. And like I said last episode, for some of these, you really just have to assume not everything lines up perfectly, and you just watch and enjoy superpowered things happening, and some pretty good jokes in the Deadpools. I have to say, to wrap this up, the end of him sacrificing himself to an Annie song in The Sun'll Come Out Tomorrow, very good. All things, they all work out in this movie in a great way. I don't know what I was going to think about this movie going into it, but I think it's grown on me a bit, and maybe I've come around to realizing the importance of the point of this movie. The first movie is a love movie and coming to terms with yourself if you're looking for deep plots. This one is accepting, and the whole, and a lot of movies have done it, family not being your family kind of thing. And there's some nice moments in this that make it a little heartwarming almost. And the time travel montage at the end of him fixing everything, saving Vanessa, who maybe she's alive in the third one because of this, stopping Green Lantern from existing by shooting Ryan Reynolds, shooting himself, and stopping the abomination of 2009 Deadpool. That is important. And having him say hi to Wolverine then. And of course, and this is only in the extended cut, the baby Hitler scene. What an end. Also, cute message overall for the film. So points for that. I don't know if anyone liked Dark Phoenix. The hope was to do something better and less cluttered with what happened with Last Stand. No surprise here, this ain't it. Some people say Apocalypse is the worst movie in this franchise, but I think those people had given up on the franchise and skipped this one somehow. I remember watching this in theaters wondering if this movie was missing something. Maybe a real final third was missing. Something got lost in the projection. Nope, that is how the movie ends. It was just done quickly and everything. It just felt empty watching it. So even though we only just met Jean, she's now going to almost be the star focus of the story. And while Last Stand put her in this role too, we've gotten to know her for 2 whole movies. While here, we only just got to scratch the surface with her being a new student in the last film. So the new status quo has the X-Men in good political standing, and they're doing missions for the government. They even have a direct line to the president. And we have Bald Charles now, thanks to him almost apocalypsing the transfer in the last film. Actually, the film starts with super cool in-space scene with a ton of characters showing off their powers. Cyclops has a space laser gun and he's blasting things, and there's another Quicksilver thing which we like. And while we love Patrick Stewart and could never think of him in any negative light, our new Charles in this franchise has always been somewhat burdened with pride and public opinion of others. And in this case, when after the space scene, Jean turns to Dark Phoenix, you can almost 100% blame those things on Charles. And that's a unique angle to take, because if you tried doing that with Patrick Stewart, I would still side with Patrick Stewart any day. But seeing the positive public opinion here, and more importantly, how quickly it is gone. I mean, people are having Mystique toys, and then they're trying to go back to the whole register thing from Last Stand, and you get a little nervous they're going to make it clustered again. But this is very much a just Dark Phoenix storyline, as far as I can tell. Remember, I'm not a comics expert, I'm just a movie guy. But it goes back to humans are always going to fear and will never understand them, and it keeps well with the tone that we've come to know from the X-Men movies. And as I said, I don't know the comics, but aliens existing and getting the Phoenix power and whatnot, I hate this. I hate this so much. Hate. At least every other movie made feels like it makes sense. In the mutants and people world, that's it. I hate it as much as Indiana Jones, including aliens in the Crystal Skull. Stick to the rules of the world and stop adding things in light. It's just stupid and bad. There's so many nice parts here with mutant powers and stuff, and a little more TLC for Scott is obviously important, but random aliens in it, garbage. Nothing can save that, sadly. Nothing can redeem this. While I hate how quickly they sideline Quicksilver here, the best part of these last 2 movies. His one fun speed scene is space. It's nice enough, but gone quickly. And unlike Charles dying here, which you'd expect, they actually kill off Mystique, the new lead in our series. Actually, this makes the speedster scene very similar to Justice League, with Superman being as fast and he's tracking him with his eyes, which is cool and all. But once again, they kill off Mystique, the lead seemingly, and her death is used as a lightning rod to mobilize and militarize Magneto and, for the first time, Beast to be on that side. And man, it takes a while to get to Magneto. I like parts of this movie. I really do. But Jean goes to Magneto, and that makes sense. That should have been where she stayed. Going to and including aliens, so annoyed by that change and development. And maybe that's a comic thing. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I hate it. That's a bad thing. There were always going to be parallels to Last Stand. Just how it's going to be. But her staying with Magneto and the mutants' battle for rights, you know, Stryker could somehow be involved, and he wasn't involved in this, and I don't think he was useful in the third movie. He clearly could have been in this part where the military comes in again. I mean, why not just throw him in there for fun? And as I said it before, no Jubilee, especially being in the last film and cut out then, it's messed up. They do her character dirty, let's be real. Like I said, this whole 4-movie arc has to primarily feel like a letdown for Charles, with almost everyone of his first class being dead, minus himself, Beast, and maybe you can count Magneto in that. I like them making Magneto a little more altruistic, trying to give him a peaceful life once again. But it makes her have to go to a third source, these dumb aliens, when he rejects her. But I like more Michael Fassbender overall. One of the actually best parts is a superhero fight in the city. The action and special effects are great. Seeing Jean be brutal and tortured at the same time, she plays the part she's given very well. And after that, we get the crap. We get some generic military people to take them, which leads to the film becoming a super strange 30 Days of Night sentient zombie style movie. And you know, I like zombie movies, but this is an X-Men movie and it has some random GD aliens. And things here are just super annoying. I can't say it enough. The end at the fight has Jean disintegrating some people. Cool. She sacrifices herself for the greater good. Sure, that's fine. But it's not a real fight. At the end of the day, she's disintegrating people, and then the main baddie comes up and she just hugs her, and then they go off into space. Whoop! And they blow up. That's it. There's no doubt that this movie was a bad one. Anyone who disagrees, baffled. Baffled by your opinion, but I play both sides of the coin. So please reach out to me on social and share why. Why do you like this movie? I want the rationale. Remember, I don't hate this movie, but I know it's a bad movie, and I know it's clearly the worst of the bunch. There's no doubt in my mind that Dark Phoenix is the worst movie of any of the X-Men movies. That's a spoiler for my list, but I don't know how you could think it's anything else. Lastly, little redemption here, and with Charles Magneto playing chess, it's nice to end the franchise as we know it. But now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the last and final X-Person movie, The New Mutants. This film came out in 2020, really wanted to see it in theaters, but pandemic, figured just wait for the hard copy release. But Target and I, best friends since there's no Best Buy near me apparently, as soon as possible, that day, got it, watched it, here we are. Was it worth the wait? Well, I think so. It's not going to win any awards. And it's not the best movie to come out in the X-Family film franchise. It only partially feels like an X-Men movie. There is a clear issue with this. No fault of its own. There was a planned trilogy that got canned after the MCU move. So did Gambit. I swear this is the last time I'm going to mention it. But remember, it is an issue. So from the trailer, I had some sort of idea of superpowers and horror. Horror? Ooh, color me intrigued. Think of this as like more of a clinical, medical version of Xavier's School. It's not outright horror. It's a little spooky. And at times it becomes a bit more of a young adult story. It doesn't get Twilight cringy, but it's a little young adulty. It takes a big build of light-hearted fun and antics. It's a bit blah in these moments. The scares and the trauma, though. Something clearly I'm into watching if y'all have been listening to the last 4 or 5 episodes, but really just this whole season of season 1 of Nack Goes to the Movies. The scares and physical, hurting manifestations of everyone's pain and past trauma, especially the smiley men, those moments are where the movie truly shines. Yes, the Essex Corporation teased here, and Apocalypse. Would have been nice to see the eventual Mr. Sinister reveal. Most likely the post-credit scene that they said they had to omit because the season and series was over would have been probably a soft tease of his reveal. But for something ending abruptly with no continuation, it works well enough as a standalone film. The end looks bright for these 5 kids with them being free, and if you want continuity with some strange parts with Logan, with kid testing as a brief scene we do see in this, which throws a timeline a bit for a loop for me, this could be something to tie in to why the world was the way it was without mutants, which is how I like to watch in some semblance of chronological order. Overall, special effects are good, the thriller horror elements are good, but not super prevalent. Overall, it's a fine movie. Is it amazing? No. Is the big old spirit bear thing a little weird? Obviously. But I like this movie and would definitely watch it again. This is a shorter blurb, but I have mixed feelings as we've come to the close of this 2-parter and a franchise overall. 20 years, 13 films. And that's it. It's done. Part of me wishes I'd ended with Logan when I did this rewatch, but this was good. Just something missing. And the unknown of what could have been looms a bit large over the franchise ending film. So, here come the tough parts. How to watch these in chronological order. Here's my take. Here's what I think. First Class, obvious, has to be first. Days of Future Past, we'll talk about this one a bit, but it mostly takes place in the 70s. Origins Wolverine, Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, X-Men, X2, Last Stand, Wolverine. The Deadpool movies back-to-back mostly makes sense. New Mutants, let the Deadpool movies be direct sequels, and finish with Logan. Days of Future Past could work great after Wolverine, and finding a way to make it the last movie is so feel-good, but you have to end with Logan no matter what, so I guess let's keep it in the beginning. I saw some weird ones putting Days of Future Past after the Wolverine and following with Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, but it gets a little bit confusing. Deadpool 2 has a Logan moment in the beginning, but chalk it up to a joke and keep the chronological order back in place. Have the Deadpools be before it, and keep New Mutants before Logan so we can have the emotional watch of catharsis in Logan to end it all. That's my order to watch. Took me a little bit, but I think it makes as much sense as can be expected. But now, my order, probably you're more curious about, is the best to worst of these. Let us go. Here's the list. Number 13, I'm not even going to go too hard. Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is garbage. Worst movie by far. Number 12, when I did part 1, I sounded better. But I'm still going to put the Wolverine here because no matter what, even though the extended scene has some cool things, it barely feels like an X-Men movie. Love Hugh Jackman, but if you like Hugh Jackman, there's other movies on this list you can watch him in. Follow that up, number 11, X-Men Origins Wolverine. It may be a worse movie, but Ryan Reynolds, just good actors in things, even though the movie's a bit mess. And obviously the Deadpool thing is brutal, but in general, I like more moments in Origins Wolverine than in The Wolverine. Number 10, I think we get past the worst ones and we'll just say the okay ones. New Mutants. Once again, nothing wrong with it, just okay. X-Men Apocalypse is going to be at number 9. Same thing. It's definitely not great, but I like more mutants in Apocalypse than I do in New Mutants to Wolverines. Definitely poor use of Oscar Isaac, but in general, Apocalypse has some redeeming qualities and feels like the true end to the modern or should I say prequel films. Number 8, The Last Stand. All over the place sometimes. A lot of very thrown away cameos just to cram characters in, and they couldn't find a way to put in Gambit. Okay, that's it. I swear that's it. Last Stand, gotta be at 8. Too jumbled of a movie. And I told you how to fix. We could have fixed it if we could have gone back in time and split that into 2 movies. Maybe could have done a lot better and given James Marsden the justice his character deserved. Now we get past kind of the issue ones and get just to the fine enough ones. Number 7, X-Men. Look, I initially had it way, way higher. But at the end of the day, the fights are a little bit silly. And you always got to put it a little bit higher than other things because of Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen. Great. But it's a little goofy. This also changed. Number 6, Deadpool, but the original. Number 5, Deadpool 2. Why'd I go this route? I don't know. I thought I liked Deadpool more, but it's a little heartwarming, Deadpool 2, and it takes you a little bit to realize it. But once you get to the end scene, you have that moment. You realize, I get it now. It's like Picasso paintings or abstract art. You just get it once you really get it. Or freeform jazz, like the SpongeBob reference goes. Number 4, X2. I want it to be higher. There's no doubt X2 is the best of the original 3 X-Men films, though. The Nightcrawler scene alone is great. The fight choreography is way better and more refined here. And we have the nice double cross, and the bad guy is just so good. There's so many good moments in X2. Easily the best of its time. Top 3, final 3. I think these are the... X2 is very good. I think these are easily the best way and above films. But X2 is right under that. Number 3, we're going to go X-Men First Class. Super fun. Great introductions and continuations of portrayals with Fassbender, Lawrence, and McAvoy. They play with the time period so well. I'm always a sucker for historical fiction. No doubt it's a great film. I've watched it many times, and a great kickoff to the next generation of X-Men films. This is a little bit of a surprise for me, but I'll explain why. Number 2, we actually went Logan, and this sounds really weird because Logan's a beautiful, amazing, nuanced film. The gore is great. It's so realistic and grounded for a superhero movie, and a great send-off for Hugh Jackman. But at number 1, I had to go Days of Future Past, and maybe it's because I have the road cut. Who knows? But either way, Days of Future Past, the best crossover to ever exist. Look, Avengers movies are so good, and they've built up for it. But in such a short time, they made you care about so many characters, and I love Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen. I don't know if there's an actor or actress I love more in the Avengers universe. These two do such a good job. Patrick Stewart is great in so many roles. Ian McKellen is also Gandalf. I mean, what's not to love? And they find a way to blend the past and the present so well. This is such a good Jackman movie, too. If you really like him, you love that he's at the forefront of this movie. If you guys think any differently, I'd love to know. But for me, I have to go Days of Future Past for my 1. There you have it, folks. Doozy of a time listing and ranking these. But it was a fun time overall. It's a shame that we're done with this 20-year standing franchise. But let us think of it not as an end, but a different chapter. Marvel and the MCU has done some great things with their properties. I firmly believe this is the best Spider-Man we have, and I can only hope that the Fantastic Four and the X-Men get the same TLC and love here. And no matter what, these movies have given us some truly amazing performances, especially Stewart, McKellen, Jackman, Fassbender. The list goes on and on and on. Eventually, we will touch upon the X-Men live-action shows like The Gifted, Legion, even some of the animated, amazing cartoons. But one step at a time here. For the Mutant movie franchise and the extended media from it. So, what is your favorite X-Men movie? You got 13 to pick from? Let me know on Twitter at knickknack_IC or on Instagram at knickknackmovies. And of course, let me know what you think of the list. And I gotta know if you can find any redeeming qualities in Dark Phoenix, because I sure can't. Well, as always, until next time, cinephiles.
Are you not entertained?
I think this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.